In this series of videos, I want to walk you through some of the themes that are covered this week in class, in particular themes of data preparation and getting to know your data. So I'll be covering a lot of the material in Module 2, from queries and selections to definition queries, some joins, basic symbology, and data classification. So it's a lot of ways that we can start to explore our data before we get into a larger analysis and identify any issues or problems that our data have that we have to adjust before we do any larger analysis. Let's start here with our first example. Here we're looking at shipwrecks in, historic shipwrecks, mostly in Europe and in the Red Sea as well. But we're just looking at simple, at this point, categorical data, just location of shipwrecks. We can dig into some of the metadata associated with this, and I'll put the link in the notes on the video and in Canvas. But this data is coming from Harvard's Mapping Past Society program, and this is all the metadata for this program, for this data set. So it gives you all the sort of reference information and abstract about what the data is and where they collected it from. The data itself, which I was lucky enough to find that it had the latitude and longitude, and then the key to all the column headings so we can understand what all these different abbreviations mean. So this is nice, since it's coming from this Harvard Mapping Past Society's organization. We have a nice set of data to better understand it. I'm sorry, a nice set of metadata. All right, so let's start digging into our shipwreck data. The first thing usually when maybe you're interested in this data, the first thing I usually do is after I look through the metadata is I'll take a peek at the attribute table and see, okay, what kind of features do we actually have? What kind of data is there? How complete is this attribute table? We can see where there's some missing information. We can also get an idea of what we could look at. So perhaps you're interested in this data set because you wanted to see what type of material, what type of cargoes these shipwrecks were carrying. We can do this in two ways. First, before we get to the types of cargo we're carrying, we can start by thinking about the starting to limit this data. So maybe you're interested in just a specific time period. So we can go in and display all the ships using the symbology. We can display them based on the category or unique values of the time period. And this is found just by looking through that metadata. You can see we have 56 categories of time periods, but as we start to explore the data, you start to see with this particular data set, there's a lot of repeats, and this was all put together by hand. Someone's entering it on the spreadsheet, so there's a lot of opportunities for errors. So we have 3 different options for ancient. We have some nulls, we have some zeros, we have question marks. We have all sorts of different terminology, which I'm not the expert on this, but these two seem to be the same except missing a space. I don't think that's a factor of a different time period. I think it's really just a human error, typing error. So these are some things that we can start to think about of how are we going to fix some of the problems in the data. Right now, we're going to do it the easy way, just by fixing what is displayed and how it's displayed. Let's start by reducing our data down by using one of the tools mentioned this week called the definition query. So with our definition queries, we're not changing anything about our data set. We're just limiting what's being displayed. So let's say we're interested in just one of these time periods. Let's say we're interested in the Roman Imperial time period. So we go to setting up this definition query using our SQL statements. We're looking for the time period is equal to Roman Imperial. And this is, let's see, the Roman Empire from 27 BC to 476 AD following Julius Caesar's assassination, if you're curious. So we can go ahead and limit everything that's being displayed. So right now we have about 1,900 shipwrecks being displayed. We just limit them to the Roman time period. We can see now they're all in that Roman imperial, or Roman, yeah, the Roman imperial time period, ignoring these extra ones for now. And we can open our attribute table and see that instead of 1,900, we have 551 options. From here, perhaps you're interested in studying specific types of cargo. We can again start to explore our data, keeping it on unique values, but going up to cargo type. And we'd see again that we have 19 different values of cargo types that are within our Imperial Roman time period. We can also see within these time periods that we have some things that are the same, that are probably the same, particularly looking at the amorphas, which are a two-handled jug for storing grains. And if we looked at the larger data set, you'd see a lot more of these names misspelled or spelled slightly different, capitalization, things like that. So a lot more things can be potentially combined. You know, we have two different ceramics too. We also have a bunch of these null values that they don't describe what the cargo is, maybe because it wasn't recorded or because they don't know what type it is, or it can be a lot of different, or wasn't a cargo ship maybe. So from here, we have our 19 values. It can get a little bit overwhelming. What we can do is group our values together. So let's say first, before we group our data, let's go back to some of our tools that we're learning this week. So we could, if we wanted to understand how many cargo ships of the 550, so how many of them had the amorphas or how many have ceramics in them, we can use our select by attributes tool. We'll use a new selection, we'll create a new expression. We want the cargo type, cargo 1 type is equal to, make this larger, actually see it, and we'll go with the two different amorphas. So since there are two different ones, we're going to use the OR catalog because we want to find any rows in the attribute table that have either amorphas or the spelling of amorphous, or the capitalized letter. Because if we did the AND connector, we would come up with 0 results because no row on the attribute table features both of those in one row. So there's always just one type of cargo. You can see here. And in the cargo type, it gets a lot more specific. So we can then go ahead and run our query statement. So all we're doing here is just asking our data a question, the simplest form of analysis. Here we're asking our data question from the attribute table, so that's why we're using a select by attributes. We can also query it based on location by using a select by location tool if we wanted to find out how many shipwrecks were in a certain distance of the borders of Spain or in the waters off of Italy, etc. So here we can see in our selection blue all of the shipwrecks that had the amorphas in them. We can also reopen our attribute table and promote just the records that are selected and see there are 244 ships that have either one of these spellings in them. We can add to this clause if we wanted to see maybe amorphas and foodstuffs, let's say. So we can change it to or we can see what that does, how many that adds. I already forgot what the other one was. I think it only adds like 1 or 2. So now we have 245. And we can go under cargo if we wanted and sort it the other way to see. So there's just one with food stuff, so it's added to it. But you can keep adding, changing what you're interested in just to see what's available. We can also do something like, let's clear out of here. We can also use a select by attribute to maybe you want to remove all of these null or ones with nothing reported, or maybe just to simplify it, you just want to focus on the ones that had the amorphous or ceramics in them. You can click on, same idea, we're doing a query statement where we're saying cargo 1 is not equal to maybe the null value or nothing reported, or any of these like blank ones. And you could run it that way to see how many that takes out. So now we're down to 367. You can also create a clause that's saying cargo is not null, just to keep it simple that way. So it's not any of these null values where nothing was recorded, or nobody wrote down nothing was reported. And we can see how many that includes. So it's 157 where nothing was even entered. So it might be, we could dig into more about the data to understand why nothing was entered, if there was an error, if this was just older recs that didn't have as much information, older studies, all sorts of things that could go into it. All right, so that is our basic look at an example of why you might want to use definition queries, or why you might want to use selection by attributes. We also looked a little bit at symbology for qualitative data. We're just using unique values, and any of the sort of tones that we're looking at here don't have a rank or order within the data. Oh, the last thing I wanted to show was how you can combine categories in your symbology. So we have two different symbols for amorphous. I'm going to make it a little obnoxious right now to find them, just so we know where we see them. So you could go through and change your symbols to be exactly alike, but that gets pretty complicated. So what I would recommend doing is grouping these layers together by clicking on one of them, holding down Control, clicking on the other, and then right-clicking. Oops, nope. Right-clicking. This happened last night too. Okay, so try this again. We're holding down Control and we're right-clicking, and you can get group values, and then it will have both together under one symbol. You can change a symbol from here. We can change the label to whatever you want it to say. And this isn't changing any of the data set. We're going to get into how in the future to merge all this data together, or join all this. This is all about these categories, so you just have one category. But this is a simple way just to explore your data and start understanding what you're looking at.